Hello everybody, and welcome to the Fortean Slip Bedtime Stories. Tonight, the true story of the Cash-Landrum incident. In the Piney woods of Texas near the town of Huffman on the night of December 29th, 1980, two women and one child came into contact with a craft of unknown origin, and all three suffered not only emotional trauma, but the physical injury as well. What was a routine drive turned into a life-changing event for these three people. 51-year-old Betty Cash was driving through the woods, traveling from New Caney to Dayton on Farm to Market Road, 1485. Riding with her was her friend Vicki Landrum, 57 years old, and Vicki's 7-year-old grandson, Colby. The three began to see a light in the distance, and in minutes, this light became a glowing object slowly crossing the tops of the pine trees. Their first thought was that it was a helicopter or airplane from a nearby airfield. But suddenly, up ahead of them loomed an immense diamond-shaped craft which was hovering over the road. At regular, fast intervals, the object would shoot down a stream of reddish-orange flames. Vicki described it as being like a diamond of fire. They could also hear a constant beeping sound as the strange craft spit out its fiery downspout. Betty came to a stop to keep from running under the craft. The car's heater had been running, but now the inside of her vehicle was so hot she had to turn off her heater and leave the car along with Vicki and Colby. Outside of the vehicle, they could hear a steady roaring sound coming from the craft in front of them. Colby became so afraid that his grandmother took him back into the car to comfort him. Betty stayed outside. Betty Cash was fascinated with the almost unbelievable vision before her. While she was watching the craft, the sky filled with helicopters. Betty said, "They seemed to rush in from all directions. It seemed like they were trying to encircle the thing." She assumed that they were from Tomball Airfield, northwest of Houston, or Ellington Air Force Base, south of Houston. The object now began to lift into the air and move to the southwest, the helicopters in pursuit. When Betty returned to the car, the door handle was so hot she could hardly open the front door. Her hand was burned getting inside. She turned on her air conditioner to cool off the inside of the vehicle. After the object had left the area, they restarted their vehicle, hoping to get home and never see the craft again. But after several miles ahead in the distance, they could see the craft with its bright lights illuminating the helicopters which were still trying to encircle it. The two ladies could count 23 helicopters in the air. After a fast trip home, all three of the witnesses became extremely sick within the next few hours. Betty's head and neck were blistered, and soon her eyes were swollen shut. She was also terribly nauseated. By the next morning, she was almost in a coma. Vicki and Colby suffered very similar symptoms, yet not as severe as Betty's. After a couple of miserable days being cared for at Vicki's home, Betty checked into a hospital where she was treated as a burn victim, remaining for 15 days. Her hair began to fall out and her eyes swelled so badly she could not see for about a week. Colby had problems with his eyes, and Vicki was losing her hair also. In addition, her scalp was numb and painful. All three of the victims were treated for radiation poisoning, and their condition was listed by doctors as life-threatening. Before long, skin sores developed, weight loss began, and skin cancer was diagnosed. The only public statement made by military officials came from Fort Hood. In an interview with the Corpus Christi Caller newspaper, they stated that no Fort Hood aircraft were in the Houston area that night. The Blacktop Road was badly damaged by the emissions from the craft that night, but it was very quickly repaired. The three sued the U.S. government for medical damages, but during a congressional hearing, the Department of the Army Inspector General denied any military involvement in the case and disallowed any compensation for the three unwilling participants in the Piney Woods affair.